After 20 years of devotion, William Gonzalez discovered the unimaginable. None of his 3 kids were biologically his. Each came from a different man, and his wife had been unfaithful throughout their marriage. His world, built on love and trust, crumbled in an instant. I know you've been waiting for this moment, and now you're smiling. Welcome to Mr. Peter Stories, where every tale leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to subscribe and join us for the adventure. The autumn wind scattered crimson leaves across the University of Massachusetts campus as William Gonzalez hurried toward the student center, his worn backpack heavy with economics textbooks. September 1998 had arrived with unusual warmth, and students lounged on the quad's grass, savoring what felt like borrowed summer days. William barely noticed them, his mind focused on the upcoming midterms and the weight of his family's expectations resting squarely on his broad shoulders. As the first in his family to attend college, William carried more than just books. His father, a mechanic who had worked double shifts for 20 years in their modest Springfield neighborhood, had instilled in him an unwavering work ethic. His mother, who cleaned houses to help pay for his education, had taught him that dignity wasn't about what you owned, but how you carried yourself. These lessons shaped his every move on campus, from his meticulously pressed clothes to his perfect attendance record. The campus coffee shop, the Daily Grind, occupied the ground floor of the student center, its large windows offering a panoramic view of the courtyard. William pushed through the heavy glass door, the rich aroma of coffee and warm pastries enveloping him. The line stretched nearly to the entrance, typical for the mid-afternoon rush. He took his place, pulling out his dog-eared copy of Advanced Financial Management to review while he waited. That's when he heard her laugh. It cut through the ambient chatter like sunlight through storm clouds, musical and genuine. William glanced up, his dark eyes scanning the crowded space until they found its source. She sat alone at a corner table, phone pressed to her ear, platinum blonde hair catching the sunlight streaming through the windows. Her free hand covered her mouth as she tried to contain another burst of laughter, her blue eyes dancing with mirth. William found himself staring, his textbook forgotten. She wore a cream-colored sweater that complemented her fair skin, a delicate gold necklace glinting at her throat. Everything about her spoke of privilege, from her perfectly manicured nails to the expensive laptop open before her. Yet there was something approachable in her expression, a warmth that transcended the usual social barriers that William had grown accustomed to navigating. "Next!" The barista's voice snapped William back to reality. He hadn't even decided what to order. As he stumbled through his request for a simple black coffee, he felt heat rise in his cheeks, acutely aware that he had lost his usual composed demeanor. Coffee in hand, William scanned the packed cafe for an empty table. His usual spot by the window was occupied, and the communal study tables were filled with students preparing for midterms. The only available seat was at a 4-person table, directly across from the blonde woman who had caught his attention. He hesitated. William Gonzalez didn't hesitate. It wasn't in his nature. He had earned his spot as one of the top business students in his class through determination and careful planning. Spontaneity wasn't part of his vocabulary, yet something about this moment felt pivotal, like standing at a crossroads where one direction led to his carefully planned future and the other to something unknown but infinitely intriguing. "Excuse me," he found himself saying as he approached her table, "would you mind if I sat here? Everywhere else is full." His voice came out steadier than he expected, given the rapid beating of his heart. She looked up from her phone, and William felt the full force of her attention. Her blue eyes met his brown ones, and for a moment, the bustling cafe seemed to fade away. A smile spread across her face, genuine and welcoming. "Of course," she said, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "I'm Bella Charlotte." William Gonzalez, he replied, setting down his coffee and backpack. As he settled into the chair, he noticed the marketing textbooks spread across her side of the table. "Marketing major?" he asked, seizing the opportunity to start a conversation. "That obvious?" Bella laughed, the same musical sound that had caught his attention earlier. "Yeah, focusing on brand development and consumer behavior." "You?" "Business administration, with a focus on finance," William answered, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to her. Usually he kept to himself on campus, focused on his studies and his part-time job at the university library. But something about Bella made him want to keep the conversation going. "Finance? You must be brilliant with numbers then," she said, leaning forward slightly. "I'm absolutely drowning in my financial marketing class. Professor Richardson might as well be speaking Greek." William smiled, recognizing the name of his favorite professor. "Actually, I have him for advanced financial management. He's tough but fair. If you're having trouble, maybe I could help." The words were out before he could second-guess them. Bella's eyes lit up. "Really? You'd do that? I've been looking for a tutor, but the waiting list at the academic center is weeks long." She pulled out her phone. "What's your number? We could set up a study session." As William recited his phone number, he noticed details about her he had missed at first glance. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated, the small crease between her eyebrows as she typed into her phone, the faint freckles across her nose that suggested she spent time outdoors. Each detail made her seem more real, less like the untouchable figure she had appeared to be at first. "There," she said, looking up with a smile. "I just texted you so you'll have my number too. How about tomorrow afternoon? Same time, same place?" William nodded, trying to maintain his composure while his heart raced at the prospect. "Tomorrow works perfectly. I have class until 2, but I'm free after that." "It's a date then," Bella said, then quickly added, "A study date, I mean." A slight blush colored her cheeks, and William found himself charmed by her momentary flustering. They fell into easy conversation after that, discovering shared interests beyond their academic pursuits. Bella, it turned out, was from Boston's affluent Beacon Hill neighborhood, but she spoke about her background without the pretension William had come to expect from students of similar circumstances. She was passionate about art, spending weekends at museums and galleries, and dreamed of working in creative marketing for major fashion brands. William found himself sharing more than he usually did with strangers. He told her about his parents' immigration from Honduras before he was born, about growing up in Springfield's working-class neighborhoods, about his dream of using his business degree to start a foundation that would help other first-generation students attend college. To his surprise and relief, Bella listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed she cared about understanding his perspective. The afternoon slipped away as they talked, the buzz of the cafe fading into background noise. Other students came and went, the autumn sun tracked across the sky outside, and their coffee cups sat empty and forgotten. It wasn't until Bella's phone buzzed with a reminder about an evening study group that they realized how much time had passed. "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's already 5!" Bella exclaimed, gathering her books. "I completely lost track of time." William began packing up his own belongings, realizing he hadn't opened a single textbook during the hours they'd sat there. Strangely, he didn't feel guilty about the lost study time. Something more important had happened at this table, something he couldn't quite name yet. As they stood to leave, an awkward moment passed between them, neither quite sure how to end this unexpected encounter. Bella solved it by stepping forward and giving him a quick hug. "Thank you for keeping me company, William Gonzalez," she said softly, "and for tomorrow's rescue mission in financial marketing." The hug caught him off guard, but William found himself returning it, briefly inhaling the subtle scent of her perfume. "Thank you for sharing your table, Bella Charlotte," he replied, trying to ignore how right it had felt to hold her for that brief moment. They walked out of the cafe together, pausing at the entrance to the student center. The autumn evening had turned cool, and Bella pulled her sweater closer around her shoulders. "Which way are you headed?" she asked. "North Campus," William replied, pointing toward the cluster of residence halls in the distance. "You?" "South," she said, gesturing in the opposite direction. "So I guess this is where we part ways. Until tomorrow?" "Until tomorrow," William confirmed, unable to keep the smile from his face. As they turned to walk their separate ways, William glanced back over his shoulder. To his surprise and pleasure, he caught Bella doing the same thing. They shared a laugh, waved one final time, and continued on their paths. Walking back to his dorm, William felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, perhaps ever. It wasn't just attraction, though Bella was undeniably beautiful. It wasn't just intellectual stimulation, though their conversation had been engaging and thought-provoking. It was a sense of possibility, of standing on the threshold of something significant. That evening, as William finally opened his textbooks to study, his phone buzzed with a message from Bella. "Just wanted to say thanks again for today. Looking forward to our study session tomorrow." He read and reread the message several times, smiling at the simple text that seemed to hold so much promise. As he typed out his reply, William realized that his carefully planned life had just taken an unexpected turn. For the first time, he was excited to see where this uncharted path might lead. That night, as he lay in bed, William thought about how a simple need for a coffee shop seat had led to hours of conversation with someone who, on paper, seemed to live in a completely different world from his. Yet somehow, in that crowded cafe, they had created their own space where backgrounds and expectations didn't matter, where only the connection between two people finding common ground existed. Little did William know that this ordinary September afternoon would become a story he would tell for years to come. The story of how he met the woman who would change his life in ways he could never have imagined, for better and for worse. But for now, he simply fell asleep with a smile on his face, looking forward to tomorrow's study session with the girl whose laugh had cut through the cafe's chaos and straight into his heart. As autumn leaves continued to fall outside his window, the first chapter of William and Bella's story was just beginning to unfold, full of promise and possibility, unmarked by the complications and heartbreak that lay years ahead. In that moment, their future stretched before them like an unwritten book, waiting to be filled with the joy, pain, love, and betrayal that would shape their lives forever. Chapter 2. Building Dreams. The crisp February morning found William at his desk in Maxwell Corp's downtown Boston office, his reflection faint in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below, dusted with fresh snow that would soon turn to grey slush in the busy streets. He adjusted his perfectly knotted tie, a graduation gift from Bella, and turned his attention back to the quarterly reports on his computer screen. "Someone's here early," called a familiar voice. Bella stood in his office doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand, her marketing team badge catching the morning light. Her presence still made his heart skip, even after 4 years together. She wore a charcoal pencil skirt and cream blouse, her blonde hair now shortened into a professional bob that framed her face perfectly. "Couldn't sleep," William admitted, accepting the coffee she offered. "The Henderson account presentation is today." Bella perched on the edge of his desk, a habit that their colleagues found endearing. "You'll nail it," she said, her confidence in him unwavering. "You always do." Their journey to this moment had been anything but typical. After that first study session in the university cafe, they had become inseparable. William's careful tutoring had helped Bella ace financial marketing, while she had introduced him to the world of art galleries and symphony halls. Their different backgrounds, which might have driven others apart, only seemed to strengthen their bond. "Remember our first real date?" Bella asked, seeming to read his thoughts. When you took me to that tiny Honduran restaurant in Springfield? William smiled at the memory. He had been nervous about showing her his world, but Bella had charmed his entire family that night. She had insisted on learning Spanish cooking terms from his mother, laughed at his father's terrible jokes, and somehow made the small, family-run restaurant feel as comfortable as any upscale Boston establishment. And then you took me to the symphony, William recalled. I was so worried about wearing the wrong thing. You looked perfect, Bella said softly. You always do. Their courtship had weathered its share of storms. Bella's parents had initially been less than thrilled about their daughter dating someone from the wrong side of the tracks. William had overheard conversations at country club events where he was mistaken for a waiter, despite his expensive suit. But they had faced it all together, their love growing stronger with each challenge overcome. The transition from university to corporate life had been seamless, almost miraculous. Maxwell Corp had recruited them both straight out of college. William for his brilliant financial mind, Bella for her innovative marketing strategies. They had started as junior associates in different departments, determined to succeed on their own merits rather than as a package deal. The partners are talking about making you the youngest VP in company history, Bella mentioned, pride evident in her voice. And my team's campaign for the Riverside project just got approved for national rollout. William stood, walking to the window. Below, Boston was coming to life. Streams of commuters, flowing through the streets like blood through veins. Remember when we used to dream about this, late nights in the library, planning our future? We're living our dream, Bella agreed, joining him at the window. But I have another dream to add to the list. William turned to her, recognizing something different in her tone. Bella reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out a small white stick. 2 pink lines were clearly visible. I took it this morning, she whispered. I'm pregnant. The world seemed to stop. William stared at the test, then at Bella's face, watching tears of joy well up in her eyes. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms, his own eyes growing misty. We're going to be parents, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The weight of the moment settled around them like a warm blanket. Through the window, the morning sun broke through Boston's clouds, bathing them in golden light. Their celebration was interrupted by William's phone buzzing. The Henderson account team was gathering for final preparations. Bella straightened his tie one last time, her fingers lingering on his chest. Go be brilliant, she said. We'll celebrate tonight. I already made reservations at L'Espalier. As William gathered his presentation materials, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they'd come. From that chance meeting in a university cafe to this moment, standing in a corner office in downtown Boston, about to become parents. The American dream, he realized, wasn't just about success. It was about having someone to share it with. The day passed in a blur of meetings, presentations, and congratulations. The Henderson account was secured, adding another victory to William's rising star. But all he could think about was the future growing inside Bella, the family they would build together. That evening, over candlelight at L'Espalier, they planned and dreamed. They would convert the home office in their Beacon Hill brownstone into a nursery. William would teach their child Spanish, while Bella would nurture their appreciation for art and music. They would combine the best of both their worlds, creating something entirely new and beautiful. To our growing family, William toasted, raising his glass of sparkling cider. Bella had insisted they both abstain from wine in solidarity. To us, Bella replied, her free hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Later that night, as they walked home through Boston's historic streets, snow beginning to fall again, William felt a completeness he had never known was possible. He had everything he had ever worked for, a successful career, a beautiful home, and most importantly, a love that seemed unshakable. If someone had told him that day in the cafe that the beautiful blonde woman would become his wife, the mother of his children, and eventually the source of his greatest pain, would he have done anything differently? The question would haunt him years later, but in this moment, walking hand in hand through the snowy evening, the future seemed perfect. They stopped at the steps of their brownstone, and William pulled Bella close, kissing her as snowflakes melted in her hair. Above them, stars peeked through breaks in the clouds, witnesses to a love that seemed destined to last forever. Inside, they stayed up late into the night, talking about names, planning for the future, and sharing their hopes and fears about parenthood. William held Bella as she drifted off to sleep, his hand protectively covering hers over her stomach, unaware that this moment of pure joy would one day become a bittersweet memory. The next few months were a whirlwind of preparation and celebration. Their colleagues threw them a surprise baby shower in the office conference room. William's parents drove up from Springfield every weekend to help prepare the nursery, his mother teaching Bella old family recipes for when the baby came. Even Bella's parents, who had gradually warmed to William over the years, became fully invested in their upcoming grandchild. Their Beacon Hill neighborhood buzzed with excitement as Bella's pregnancy progressed. The local bookstore owner set aside parenting books for them. The cafe where they got their morning coffee began stocking Bella's pregnancy cravings. Their life had become a testament to the power of love to bridge any divide. One evening, as they sat on their rooftop garden overlooking the city, Bella asked, "Do you ever think about how lucky we are? How perfectly everything worked out?" William squeezed her hand, thinking of their journey. "Not luck," he said. "We worked for this. We fought for this. We built this together." Neither of them could have imagined then how fragile their perfect world would prove to be, or how the very foundation of their love would be tested in ways they never expected. But for now, they were just William and Bella, watching the sun set over Boston, their dreams seemingly within reach. The chapter of their life that began in a university cafe was drawing to a close, making way for a new one filled with the promise of family. Their love had conquered social boundaries, cultural differences, and family expectations. Surely, they thought, it could survive anything. As spring turned to summer, their excitement grew with Bella's expanding belly. William would spend evenings reading stories in Spanish to their unborn child, while Bella played Mozart through headphones placed on her stomach. They were creating their own traditions, blending their backgrounds into something uniquely theirs. Yet even as they prepared for their greatest joy, unseen cracks were beginning to form in their foundation. The long hours at work, the stress of impending parenthood, and the weight of expectations would soon test their bond in ways they could never have anticipated. But for now, in their Beacon Hill brownstone, surrounded by baby clothes and painting color swatches, William and Bella remained blissfully unaware of the storms gathering on their horizon. They were still living in the glow of their perfect love story, believing that their biggest challenges were behind them. The truth, with all its complexity and pain, was still years away, waiting patiently to unravel the careful tapestry of their shared dreams. For now, they remained suspended in the beauty of their imagined future, their love for each other as certain as the sun rising over Boston Harbor each morning. Chapter 3. The Heart of Home. The nursery walls were a soft sage green, decorated with hand-painted woodland creatures that Bella had insisted on doing herself. William stood in the doorway, watching his wife put the finishing touches on a delicate fox, her pregnant belly making it difficult to reach the higher spots. The morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, casting a dreamlike glow over the room they had spent months preparing. "Marcus," Bella said suddenly, turning to William with paint-speckled hands. "What do you think about the name Marcus?" William rolled the name around in his mind, testing its weight. Marcus Gonzalez, he said slowly. It's strong, classical but modern. Like his father, Bella smiled, setting down her paintbrush and walking into his embrace. At 8 months pregnant, she practically glowed, her blonde hair longer now and often tied back in a loose braid. The nursery had become their sanctuary over the past months. While their careers continued to soar, William, now the youngest vice president in Maxwell Corp's history, Bella leading the company's most successful marketing campaign to date. They spent their evenings here, dreaming of the life they would build. June 15th, 2005, arrived with unexpected swiftness. Marcus James Gonzalez entered the world at 3:47 a.m., his first cry echoing through Massachusetts General Hospital's delivery room. William held Bella's hand through 22 hours of labor, whispering encouragements in both English and Spanish, his heart nearly bursting when the nurse placed their son in his arms. "He's perfect," William whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes. Marcus had skin a shade lighter than William's, with a dusting of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the universe. The first months passed in a blur of midnight feedings and lullabies. William took extended paternity leave, determined to be present for every moment. He learned to change diapers with military precision, could warm a bottle one-handed while reviewing quarterly reports, and discovered that Spanish love songs were particularly effective at soothing Marcus to sleep, their Beacon Hill brownstone transformed with the presence of their son. The pristine living room now featured a designer playmat. William's carefully organized home office gained a top-of-the-line baby monitor. Even Bella's art studio included a cushy nursing chair where she would feed Marcus while sketching new marketing concepts. By the time Marcus was walking, Bella was pregnant again. James Alexander Gonzalez arrived in 2007, bringing with him a new wave of joy and chaos. While Marcus had William's thoughtful nature, James was all energy and laughter, crawling and then running before his parents were ready. "How did we get so lucky?" William would often wonder aloud, watching his sons play together. Marcus, ever the protective big brother, would help James with puzzles and building blocks, the two of them creating elaborate structures that William carefully preserved in photographs. Sarah Grace Gonzalez completed their family in 2009, her arrival turning their home into what neighbors called the happy house. The sound of children's laughter became as constant as the Boston church bells, mixing with the scent of Bella's attempt at recreating William's mother's recipes and the endless parade of art projects covering the refrigerator. William threw himself into fatherhood with the same dedication he brought to his career. Every morning began with Pancake Parliament, where he would make pancakes in shapes requested by the children while they held serious discussions about their plans for the day. Marcus liked his imperfect circles, James requested increasingly complex dinosaur shapes, and Sarah insisted on hearts, always hearts. Weekends became sacred family time. They explored the Boston Children's Museum, visited the Franklin Park Zoo, and spent hours in the public garden, feeding ducks and riding the swan boats. William taught them to play baseball in the common, while Bella introduced them to art through messy but joyful painting sessions in the garden. Education was paramount in their household. William established college funds before each child was born, and both parents were actively involved in their schooling. Marcus showed an early aptitude for mathematics, often sitting with William in the evening to work through advanced problems. James excelled in science, turning their basement into an impromptu laboratory. Sarah inherited her mother's artistic talent, her drawings growing more sophisticated with each passing year. But there were moments, brief and easily dismissed, when something felt off. Times when Bella would look at the children with an unreadable expression, or when she would receive phone calls that she took in private. William, absorbed in being the best father he could be, attributed any changes in his wife's behavior to the natural stress of balancing career and family. Their love story became legend at Maxwell Corporation. Young associates would watch them during company events, the way they still gravitated toward each other across crowded rooms, how they could communicate with just a glance. Their children became regular visitors to the office, charming everyone from the security guards to the CEO. "Your family is like something out of a magazine," colleagues would comment, and William would beam with pride, never noticing how Bella's smile sometimes didn't quite reach her eyes. The children flourished under their parents' devoted attention. Marcus joined the junior debate team, his logical mind and quiet confidence making him a natural leader. James's science projects won ribbons at every fair, his curiosity seemingly boundless. Sarah's artwork began winning local competitions, her talent raw and promising. Family dinners were a non-negotiable part of their routine. No matter how busy work became, they gathered around their antique dining table each evening, sharing stories about their days. William would help with homework afterward, moving between children with infinite patience, while Bella supervised bath time and bedtime stories. Their home videos captured countless precious moments. Marcus's first steps, James learning to ride a bike, Sarah's ballet recitals. William meticulously documented their lives, creating photo albums and digital archives, wanting to preserve every smile, every achievement, every ordinary moment that made up their extraordinary life. Holidays became elaborate affairs. Thanksgiving meant hosting both families, with William's parents bringing traditional Honduran dishes, while Bella's mother contributed her New England classics. Christmas transformed their home into a wonderland, with decorations that blended both their cultural traditions. The children would perform an annual Christmas pageant, with Marcus typically narrating, James providing sound effects, and Sarah directing the whole production. But beneath this tapestry of perfect family life, invisible threads were starting to unravel. There were business trips that seemed to run longer than necessary, unexplained charges on credit card statements that Bella quickly justified, phone calls that ended abruptly when William entered the room. The children continued to grow, their personalities developing in ways that sometimes gave William pause. Marcus's serious nature and dark eyes mirrored his own, but James's infectious laugh and natural athleticism came from somewhere else. Sarah's artistic talent clearly came from Bella, but her mannerisms occasionally seemed foreign to both parents. Still, William remained blissfully unaware of the shadows gathering at the edges of his perfect life. His focus remained on being the father he had always dreamed of becoming. He coached Little League, helped with science fair projects, attended every parent-teacher conference, and created elaborate birthday celebrations that became neighborhood legends. Their home remained filled with love, laughter, and the comfortable chaos of family life. Photo frames lined the walls, capturing sunny beach vacations, ski trips to Vermont, and quiet moments at home. Each image told the story of a family bound by love, trust, and shared dreams. The truth slumbered beneath this beautiful surface, waiting for the moment it would shatter their carefully constructed world. But for now, in their Beacon Hill brownstone, William Gonzalez remained the proud father of 3 remarkable children, the loving husband of a seemingly devoted wife, living what appeared to be the American dream. Little did he know that the very foundation of this dream was built on shifting sand, and that the tide of truth was slowly but inexorably rising to wash it all away. This chapter of their lives would later become both the sweetest and the most painful to remember. Years filled with genuine love and unconscious deception, with pure joy and hidden betrayal, with unquestioning trust and unspoken lies. It was a time when love seemed simple, when family meant everything, and when William Gonzalez believed with all his heart that he was living the life he was meant to live. Chapter 4. When Truth Breaks. The waiting room at Massachusetts General Hospital hadn't changed much in the 18 years since Marcus's birth. William sat in the same type of uncomfortable chair, flipping through outdated magazines, trying to ignore the growing knot in his stomach. The routine physical had turned into a series of additional tests after his blood work showed some concerning results. Dr. Elena Thompson entered the consultation room with an expression William had learned to read during his years in corporate negotiations. Something was wrong. She carried his file, unnecessarily thick for what should have been a standard checkup. "Mr. Gonzalez," she began, settling into her chair, "I've reviewed all your test results and there's something we need to discuss." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Your blood work revealed some anomalies that prompted us to run additional tests. What I'm about to tell you may come as a shock." William straightened in his chair, his hands gripping the armrests. "Is it cancer?" he asked, thinking of his 3 children at home, Marcus preparing for college applications, James immersed in his science projects, Sarah rehearsing for her dance recital. "No, nothing like that," Dr. Thompson assured him. "Mr. Gonzalez, the tests indicate that you have a condition called a zoospermia. It's a condition you've had since birth, and it means—" She hesitated, then continued gently, "It means you are unable to father children naturally." The words hit William like physical blows. "That's impossible," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I have 3 children." Dr. Thompson's expression softened with compassion. "Mr. Gonzalez, this condition is congenital. You've had it your entire life. There is no possibility that you could have fathered children without medical intervention, which your records don't indicate you've received." The room seemed to tilt on its axis. William's mind raced through calculations he didn't want to make, through possibilities he couldn't bear to consider. Could there be a mistake? "We ran the tests multiple times," Dr. Thompson replied. "I'm absolutely certain about this diagnosis." William sat in stunned silence, memories flooding his mind. Marcus's first steps, James's little league games, Sarah's ballet recitals. Every moment he had treasured as a father, now twisted into something else, something unrecognizable. "I'd like to schedule a follow-up appointment, Doctor," Thompson was saying, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "We should discuss this in more detail, and I can refer you to a genetic counselor." William nodded mechanically, accepting the appointment card she handed him. He walked out of the hospital into the bright Boston afternoon, the world continuing its normal rhythm while his had stopped completely. In his car, he sat motionless, staring at the steering wheel. His phone buzzed, a text from Bella. "How did the checkup go? Don't forget we have Sarah's recital tonight." The heart emoji seemed to mock him. With trembling fingers, he opened his laptop and searched for DNA testing services. 3 days later, plain brown packages arrived at his office address. That evening, he collected the children's DNA samples under the guise of a genetics project for James's science fair. "We're going to trace our ancestry," he explained, swabbing each child's cheek while maintaining a facade of normalcy that felt like it would shatter him. The next 2 weeks were torture. William went through the motions of daily life like an actor in a play, attending meetings, helping with homework, kissing Bella goodbye each morning, but inside he was coming undone. When the results arrived, he opened them in his office with shaking hands. The clinical language couldn't soften the blow. 0% probability of paternity, repeated 3 times, once for each child. The truth he had feared was now irrefutable, printed in black and white. That night, after the children were asleep, he confronted Bella in their bedroom. She was sitting at her vanity, removing her makeup, a routine he had watched for 20 years. "Is there something you need to tell me about our children?" he asked, his voice steady. Despite the earthquake in his heart, Bella's hand froze, the makeup wipe hovering near her face. In the mirror's reflection, he watched the color drain from her cheeks. "What do you mean?" she asked, but her voice trembled. William placed the medical report and DNA results on her vanity. "I can't have children, Bella. I never could. And DNA tests show I'm not their father." His voice cracked on the last word. "Please, just tell me the truth. For once, tell me the truth." Bella stared at the papers, her hands shaking. For a long moment, only the ticking of their bedside clock broke the silence. Finally, she turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "Who are their fathers?" William asked, each word feeling like glass in his throat. The truth spilled out in ugly fragments. 3 different men, all business trips, all moments of weakness, as she called them. None of them knew about the children. None of them were still in her life. "They're your children in every way that matters," Bella pleaded, reaching for his hand. "You raised them, you love them." William pulled away as if her touch burned. "Every bedtime story," he said, his voice hollow. "Every soccer game, every fever, every birthday, every moment I thought I was their father. It was all a lie." "Not the love," Bella insisted. "The love was real. Is real." "How can anything be real when it's built on a lie?" William asked. He looked around their bedroom, photos of their family on every wall, memories that now felt like wounds. 20 years, Bella. 20 years of lies. The next few days passed in a blur of legal consultations and agonizing decisions. William moved into the guest room, unable to sleep beside the woman who had orchestrated this deception. The children, perceptive as always, sensed the tension but didn't understand its source. Then came the hardest conversation of William's life. Sitting in their family room, surrounded by the artifacts of their shared life, he and Bella told the children the truth. Marcus, at 14, understood immediately, his face hardening into an expression William had never seen before. James, 12, asked scientific questions about DNA and paternity, his analytical mind trying to make sense of the impossible. Sarah, 10, simply climbed into William's lap and held on tight, asking through tears if he would stop loving them now. "Never," William promised, holding her close. "You are my children. Nothing can change that." But everything had changed. The comfortable rhythms of their family life fractured. Meals became silent affairs. The easy laughter that had filled their home was replaced by careful conversations and awkward pauses. The legal proceedings began, sterile conference rooms replacing their warm family dinners. Custody battles loomed, with Bella's lawyers arguing biology while William's argued devotion. The children, asked to choose, did what no child should have to do. They chose the father who had raised them over the mother who had borne them. Through it all, William maintained his dignity, showing up at every school event, every sports game, every recital. He refused to let his children become casualties of their mother's betrayal. But late at night, alone in the guest room that had become his sanctuary, he would look at old family photos and try to understand how something so beautiful could have been built on such savage lies. The chapter of their life that had seemed so perfect now revealed itself as an elaborate illusion. The happy family in the Beacon Hill brownstone had been living in a house of cards, and the truth had blown it all down. Yet even as his world crumbled, William found strength in the love he had for his children, a love that transcended DNA, that had been built day by day, story by story, bandage by bandage. They might not share his blood, but they shared his heart, and that, he discovered, was the only truth that really mattered. As autumn turned the Boston Common golden, William sat on a park bench, watching leaves fall, remembering how he used to bring the children here to play. A young father passed by, pushing a stroller, and William felt both envy and compassion. Envy for the man's unquestioning certainty in his fatherhood, and compassion for his innocence. The truth had shattered their family's foundation, but William was determined to build something new from the pieces, something honest, something real. The future stretched before him, uncertain but uncompromised by lies. The hardest part wasn't losing what he had, but accepting that what he had was never really his to begin with. Chapter 5. Pieces of a Broken Life. The courthouse loomed before them, its granite steps worn by generations of broken dreams. William adjusted his tie, still the same one Bella had given him years ago, though he wasn't sure why he kept wearing it. Marcus stood beside him, 14 going on. You're 40, his jaw set in determination. James fidgeted with his tablet, probably running calculations in his head as he always did when nervous. Sarah clung to William's hand, her small fingers intertwined with his, as if afraid he might disappear. All rise. The bailiff's voice echoed through courtroom 7. Judge Patricia Martinez, known for her expertise in family law, surveyed the scene before her. On one side sat William with the children, their lawyer, Emma Richardson, organizing documents with practiced efficiency. On the other side, Bella sat alone, her expensive legal team flanking her like guards. Your Honor, Emma began, we're here today to address the custody arrangement for Marcus, James, and Sarah Gonzalez. While Mrs. Gonzalez is the biological mother, Mr. Gonzalez has been their primary caregiver and father in every meaningful way for their entire lives. The proceedings unfolded like a surreal play. William watched as his life, their life, was dissected and examined under fluorescent lights. Bank statements showed his dedication through years of private school tuition, extracurricular activities, and college funds. Calendar entries documented every doctor's appointment, every school event, every family vacation. Then came the children's turn to speak. They had insisted on testifying, despite both parents' reservations. Marcus went first, his voice steady despite his youth. I remember when I was 7, and I had pneumonia, he began. Dad stayed up with me for 3 straight nights, sleeping in a chair by my bed, checking my temperature every hour. He taught me to play baseball, helped me with my math homework, showed me how to tie a tie. Biology doesn't make a father, love does. James followed, his scientific mind approaching the situation with surprising emotional clarity. Did you know that emperor penguins can recognize their chicks by voice alone among thousands? That's what Dad does. He knows each of us really knows us. He knows I like my sandwiches cut diagonally and that I'm scared of thunderstorms, but pretend I'm not. That's not DNA, that's love. Sarah's testimony brought tears to even the bailiff's eyes. When I have nightmares, I still call for Daddy, she said simply. And he always comes. During a recess, William found himself in the courthouse bathroom, gripping the sink as waves of emotion threatened to overwhelm him. The mirror reflected a man he barely recognized, grey, threading through his temples, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there months ago. Dad! Marcus's voice came from the doorway. He'd started calling William Dad with even more frequency since the revelation, as if determined to prove their bond was unbreakable. I'm okay, son, William said, straightening up. The word son caught in his throat, but he pushed through. Biology couldn't take away 14 years of love. Back in the courtroom, Bella's testimony painted a picture of remorse and desperation. I made terrible mistakes, she admitted, her voice breaking, but I never stopped loving them. I never stopped loving him. Everything else in our marriage was real. The judge's decision came after what felt like years compressed into hours. Primary custody would go to William, with Bella granted visitation rights. The children would continue living in the Beacon Hill brownstone with their father, while Bella would move into the garden apartment below, close enough to maintain relationships with her children, but separate. Outside the courthouse, Boston's spring rain fell softly, cleaning the city air. William held an umbrella over his children, still his children, the court had affirmed, as reporters shouted questions they ignored. That evening, in their home that felt both familiar and strange, William cooked dinner, while the children did their homework at the kitchen table. Their normal routine, though nothing felt normal anymore. The silence, where Bella's laugh used to be, felt like another presence in the room. "Dad," Sarah asked, looking up from her social studies worksheet, "are you still going to come to my dance recital next week?" William stopped stirring the pasta sauce, turning to face his daughter. "Of course I am. Front row, just like always. Even though—" She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. William gathered his children close, the homework forgotten. "Listen to me, all of you. Nothing changes how much I love you. You are my children. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by love, by every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every proud moment and difficult day we've shared. Biology is just science. Family is something more." That night, after the children were asleep, William sat in his study, sorting through old photographs. Each image told a story he was now forced to reinterpret. Marcus's first steps, James's science fair victory, Sarah's ballet debut. The memories weren't lies. The love in them was real. But they were clouded now by questions he couldn't answer. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Marcus stood in the doorway, looking uncertain, a rare expression for his typically confident oldest child. "Can't sleep?" William asked, making room on the leather couch. Marcus sat beside him, picking up one of the photos, a day at Fenway Park, all three kids wearing Red Sox caps, William teaching them to keep score. "You know," Marcus said slowly, "in biology class, we learned about phenotypes and genotypes, about how genes express themselves." William waited, hearing the scientist in his son working through something emotional. "But we also learned about epigenetics, how experiences can affect how genes work, how nurture can literally change nature." Marcus looked up at his father. "Maybe that's what family really is. Not just the genes we inherit, but the people who shape who we become." William pulled his son close, feeling the shoulders that were starting to broaden, smelling the hint of the man he was becoming in the remnants of his little boy's scent. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," Marcus replied, leaning into the embrace. The next few weeks established new rhythms. Bella moved into the garden apartment, her presence below them like a constant reminder of what they'd lost. The children developed a schedule of sorts: breakfast with William, occasional dinners with their mother, a delicate dance of divided loyalties. William threw himself into being even more present for his children. He learned to French braid Sarah's hair for ballet, watching YouTube tutorials late at night until his fingers could manage the intricate patterns. He helped James build a computer from scratch, both of them finding comfort in the logical progression of connecting parts. He and Marcus started running together in the mornings, their conversations deepening with each mile covered. One evening, as William prepared dinner, he'd finally mastered his mother's paella recipe, he heard laughter floating up from the garden apartment. The children were having dinner with Bella, their joy piercing him like physical pain. But mixed with the hurt was a strange gratitude. Despite everything, she had given him 3 incredible gifts. The lies that brought them into his life couldn't diminish the love that had grown there. The doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. On the steps stood his mother, her face lined with concern and love. She had driven up from Springfield as soon as she'd heard the court's decision. "Mijo," she said simply, pulling him into an embrace that made him feel like a child again. "Your father and I want you to know. Those children are our grandchildren. Nothing changes that." That night, over cups of coffee grown cold with talking, his mother shared wisdom that would stay with him. Family isn't about whose blood runs through your veins. It's about who you would spill your blood for. As spring turned to summer, the wounds began to scab over, if not heal entirely. The children spent weekends with Bella, weekdays with William, and slowly they all learned to navigate their new reality. The pain didn't disappear, but it became bearable, like an old injury that aches when rain is coming. William kept every promise he'd ever made to his children. He sat front row at Sarah's recital, cheered at James's baseball games, helped Marcus with his college applications. He proved that fatherhood wasn't about DNA. It was about showing up every day, even when your heart was breaking. The chapter closed not with dramatic revelations or tearful confrontations, but with quiet moments of chosen love. With Marcus asking William to help him tie his tie for his first date, with James calling him at work to share his latest scientific discovery, with Sarah falling asleep against his shoulder during movie night, trusting him completely to keep her safe. In the end, the truth had shattered their family's foundation, but from the pieces, they were building something new. Something stronger because it was chosen, something more precious because it had been tested, something more real because it was based not on biology, but on the daily choice to love. Chapter 6. Learning to breathe again. The seasons changed, but some things remained constant. Every morning, William still made breakfast for the children, Marcus's protein smoothie, James's chocolate chip pancakes, Sarah's cinnamon toast. The kitchen of their Beacon Hill brownstone remained the heart of their home, even if the family that gathered there was forever changed. 5 years had passed since the truth exploded their world. The children were growing up. Marcus, now 19, was thriving in his second year at MIT, studying biomedical engineering. James, 17, had become captain of the robotics team, his scientific mind growing sharper by the day. Sarah, 15, was emerging as a talented photographer, capturing moments of beauty in unexpected places. On this particular autumn morning, William stood at his bedroom window, coffee in hand, watching leaves dance across their small backyard. Below, lights glowed in Bella's garden apartment. She still lived there, an arrangement that had proven surprisingly workable over time. The children moved between the two spaces with increasing ease, though the pain of divided loyalties never fully disappeared. "Dad," Marcus's voice came from the doorway. He was home for the weekend, his college experience having added new maturity to his familiar features. "Can we talk?" William gestured to the leather armchair by the window, their spot for important conversations since that first night after the court hearing. Marcus sat, his fingers drumming against the armrest, in a gesture so like William's own that it made his heart ache. "I've been doing research for my genetics class," Marcus began, his voice careful, "about inherited traits, DNA manipulation, the science behind biological parenthood." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "And I realized something. The more I learn about genetics, the less important they seem." William waited, sensing there was more. "You chose us, Dad. Every day you choose us. That's worth more than any DNA match." The words hung in the air between them, healing old wounds even as they acknowledged them. William reached out and squeezed his son's shoulder because Marcus was his son, biology be damned. Later that day, William found James in the garage, surrounded by circuit boards and computer parts. His latest robotics project was spread across the workbench that had once held William's tools, now repurposed for a new generation's dreams. "Need any help?" William asked, though they both knew James's technical knowledge had surpassed his years ago. "Always," James replied with a grin, making space at the bench. As they worked together, James explained his project, a robotic arm designed to assist with physical therapy. William noticed how his son's eyes lit up when talking about helping others, recognizing the same drive for service that had shaped his own career choices. Sarah's photography exhibition at her high school brought the whole family together in ways that still felt fragile but healing. William and Bella sat on opposite sides of the auditorium, but they both beamed with pride as their daughter explained her work to admiring crowds. One photograph in particular caught everyone's attention, a black and white image of hands. William recognized his own, weathered and strong, intertwined with Marcus's, James's, and Sarah's. The caption read simply, "Family, more than blood." That evening after the exhibition, the children insisted on a family dinner, all of them, including Bella. They gathered around the dining room table that had witnessed countless meals, arguments, celebrations, and confessions. The awkwardness was there, but something else too. A tentative peace, perhaps even forgiveness. Bella had changed over the years. Regret had softened her edges, humbled her in ways that made her a better mother, if not a better wife. She caught William's eye across the table as the children laughed at some shared joke. "Remember when James tried to build a robot to do his homework?" Marcus was saying, launching them into a spiral of family stories. "Or when Sarah convinced us she needed a pony for her photography project," James added. "What about the time Dad tried to make Mom's lasagna and set off all the smoke alarms?" Sarah chimed in. The memories flowed, some from before the revelation, some after. William realized that their family history hadn't been erased by the truth. It had just become more complicated, more nuanced, more real. Later that night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, William sat in his study, reviewing college brochures for James. A soft knock drew his attention. Sarah stood in the doorway, her camera hanging around her neck. "Can I show you something?" she asked, settling beside him on the couch. She pulled up images on her camera's display, a series of photographs she'd taken over the past year, William teaching James to drive, Marcus falling asleep over his textbooks, family dinners, holiday celebrations, quiet moments between the chaos. "I've been documenting us," she explained. "Not the perfect family we thought we were, but the real one we've become." The images told their story with unflinching honesty. The pain, the healing, the love that had survived it all. William saw himself through his daughter's lens, greying at the temples but standing straight, smiling despite the sadness in his eyes, always reaching out to his children. "You know what I love about photography," Sarah continued. "It teaches you to find beauty in imperfection, to see truth in broken things." William pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher," she replied, echoing Marcus's words from years ago. The next morning brought another milestone, James's acceptance letter from Stanford's engineering program. The celebration was spontaneous and joyful, with Bella coming upstairs to share the moment. For a brief time, they were just proud parents, their complicated past set aside in favor of their son's achievement. As spring approached, William found himself thinking more about forgiveness. Not the kind that erases the past, but the kind that allows you to build a future, despite it. He watched Bella with their children because they would always be their children, and saw how hard she worked to earn back their trust, to be worthy of their love. One evening, as he walked through the public garden where he'd once pushed strollers and chased toddlers, William ran into Bella. They stood awkwardly for a moment before settling on a bench, their bench, from what felt like another lifetime. "I've been wanting to tell you something," Bella said, her voice soft but steady. "You're a better parent than I ever deserved for my children. Thank you for not letting my mistakes rob them of the father they love." William was quiet for a long moment, watching the swan boats glide across the pond. "They taught me something important," he finally said. "Love is a choice we make every day. Biology gives us a beginning, but our choices write the story." As they sat there, a comfortable distance between them on the bench, William realized that this too was part of healing. Learning to hold both the pain and the gratitude, the betrayal and the gift it had unwittingly given him. That night, he added his own photograph to Sarah's collection, A simple shot of 5 people at a dinner table, none of them perfect, all of them family. The edges of the frame were blurry, but the love was in sharp focus. The chapter closed not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with quiet moments of chosen family. With Marcus calling late at night to share his latest research breakthrough, with James asking for help designing his robotics project, with Sarah showing him how to see beauty in broken things. They were no longer the perfect family in the Beacon Hill brownstone. They were something more real, a family that had been tested, broken, and rebuilt, stronger in the broken places. A family bound not by blood but by choice, by love, by the daily decision to remain present in each other's lives. As William turned out the lights that night, he heard the echoes of laughter from years past, saw the shadows of memories on the walls, and felt the weight of both loss and love in his heart. They were all learning to breathe again, finding their way in this new normal, discovering that family, real family, is more than DNA deep. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. Building Something New. The invitation sat on William's desk, its embossed letters catching the morning light. Marcus's graduation from MIT was approaching, and with it came a new challenge, their first major family event since the revelation. The young man who had once assured the judge of his father's love was now preparing to become a doctor, his choice of profession perhaps not coincidentally focused on genetics and fertility research. "We should host a party," Bella had suggested during one of their now civil co-parenting discussions. "Both of us, together, for Marcus." The idea hung between them, like a delicate bridge over troubled waters. 5 years of separate celebrations, careful scheduling, and maintained distances had created a rhythm. This would disrupt everything, but maybe, William thought, some disruptions were necessary for healing. The graduation party planning became a family project. James, home from his freshman year at Stanford, applied his engineering mind to logistics. Sarah, her photographer's eye now professionally trained, designed the invitations. William and Bella found themselves in awkward but productive meetings, planning menus and guest lists. "Remember his 5th birthday?" Bella asked one evening as they sorted through old photographs for a celebration slideshow. "When he insisted on a science-themed party." William smiled despite himself. "And we turned the basement into a laboratory. You spent hours making those fake beakers with colored water." The memory hung between them, sweet but sharp-edged. They were getting better at this, at acknowledging their shared past without drowning in its complications. Marcus's graduation day dawned bright and clear. William stood in his bedroom, adjusting his tie, a new one bought specifically for this occasion. The old tie, Bella's gift from years ago, had finally been retired, a small but significant step in moving forward. The ceremony itself was a blur of emotion. When Marcus crossed the stage, William felt tears streaming down his face. His son, always his son, had graduated summa cum laude, his research on genetic therapy already gaining attention in medical circles. The party afterward transformed their brownstone. Both floors were opened up, including Bella's apartment, creating a flow of spaces that mirrored their slowly healing family. Guests moved between levels, carrying plates of food and glasses of champagne, remarking on how well they'd all managed this unusual situation. Late in the evening, William found Marcus alone in the study, looking at the wall of family photographs that Sarah had curated over the years. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need to tell you something." He pulled out a folder from his graduation robe. "My thesis research. It wasn't just academic for me. I've been studying genetic inheritance patterns, yes, but also the epigenetic effects of emotional bonds, of chosen family." William sat beside his son, heart swelling with pride and love. "I dedicated my research to you," Marcus continued, to the father who showed me that DNA is just chemistry. But love, real love, that's something science can't fully explain. The moment was interrupted by James bursting in, excitement radiating from him. They accepted my prototype. The Children's Hospital wants to trial my therapy robot. The celebration grew as Sarah joined them, her camera as always around her neck, capturing the moment when her brothers hugged, when William pulled them all close, when Bella appeared in the doorway, watching with a mixture of joy and regret. Later that night, after the guests had left and the children had gone to their rooms, William and Bella found themselves alone in the kitchen, cleaning up the last of the party debris. "We did good," Bella said softly. "With them, I mean. Despite everything, we did good." William nodded, loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "They did good. They're the ones who taught us how to be better people." The silence that followed was comfortable, perhaps for the first time in years. They had found a way to be parents together, even if they could no longer be partners. Summer brought more changes. James's robotics project took him to California for an internship. Sarah won a photography scholarship to study in Paris for a semester. Marcus began his medical school applications, his determination to help other families dealing with fertility issues driving him forward. One Sunday morning, as William sat on their small back patio drinking coffee, he heard familiar footsteps. Bella appeared with her own cup, a tentative look on her face. "Can we talk?" she asked. William gestured to the empty chair, and they sat together, watching the morning light play on the brick walls of their shared home. "I've been offered a position in New York," Bella said. "A major marketing firm. It's an incredible opportunity." William felt an unexpected pang. Despite everything, having her near had become part of their new normal. "The children are grown now," he said carefully. "They would understand." "That's just it," Bella replied. "I've spent 5 years trying to make amends, trying to be worthy of their forgiveness. Moving away feels like giving up," William finished. "Yes." She turned to face him. "What do you think I should do?" The question surprised him. Not because she asked it, but because he found he could answer it honestly, without the weight of past pain clouding his judgment. "I think," he said slowly, "that you've earned the right to choose your own path now. The children know you love them. They know you're sorry. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself too." Tears slipped down Bella's cheeks. "How did you do it? How did you find a way to not hate me?" William considered the question, watching a pair of sparrows build a nest in the garden trellis. "I realized that hating you meant poisoning my own heart, and I needed that heart whole and healthy to love our children." The conversation shifted something between them, not erasing the past, but perhaps finally putting it in its proper place, behind them. The children's reactions to Bella's potential move surprised them both. Marcus offered to help her research apartments near Columbia, where he'd been accepted to medical school. James immediately started designing a smart home system so they could all stay connected. Sarah promised to visit during her layovers between Paris and Boston. They had built something new from the ashes of their old life, something honest, something resilient. The children moved easily between their parents now, carrying no messages but their own love, building bridges where walls had once stood. As summer turned to fall, William helped Bella pack up the garden apartment. Each box represented a chapter closing, but also a new one beginning. They found old photographs, forgotten toys, pieces of their shared history that no longer had the power to wound. The day Bella moved to New York, the whole family helped. Marcus and James carried furniture, while Sarah documented everything with her camera. William found himself directing traffic, organizing the moving trucks, falling into the familiar role of family coordinator. As they stood on the sidewalk for final goodbyes, Bella turned to William. "Thank you," she said simply, "for showing our children what real love looks like, for being the father they deserved, for finding a way to forgive." William hugged her, the first real embrace they'd shared since the revelation. It felt like closing a book gently rather than slamming it shut. "Thank you for giving me 3 incredible gifts," he replied. "Everything else, we've survived it." The children gathered around them, and Sarah captured one last family photo, not the perfect family they'd pretended to be, but the real one they'd become. The edges were softer now, the wounds healed into scars that told their story of survival and love. That evening, alone in the brownstone that had seen so much joy and pain, William looked through Sarah's latest photographs. Each image told a story of redemption, not the easy kind that comes from forgetting, but the hard-won peace that comes from choosing to love anyway. They were all learning still, growing into this new version of family, but the foundation was stronger now, built on truth rather than illusion, on choice rather than obligation. Marcus would become a doctor, helping other families navigate the complex waters of genetics and love. James would continue creating machines to heal and help. Sarah would capture beauty in broken things. And William? He would keep choosing love every day, just as he had from the moment he first held each of his children. Because in the end, that's what family really meant. Not the blood in your veins, but the love in your heart and the choices you make every single day. Chapter 8. The Weight of Time. The first months after the divorce were heavy with silence, not just between William and Bella, but within their fractured home. The duplex arrangement, though practical for the children's sake, became a constant reminder of the broken family they now were. The narrow stairway separating the 2 floors turned into a battleground for small but painful moments. An awkward exchange of glances as William handed Bella a school permission slip. The shuffle of footsteps late at night when one parent couldn't sleep. The children, perceptive as ever, took it upon themselves to act as intermediaries. Marcus, now in high school, carried messages between his parents with an air of maturity that belied his years. James, quieter but observant, made it his mission to keep the peace, mediating any tensions that arose. Sarah, still too young to fully grasp the complexities, approached it with innocent optimism, often suggesting, "Why don't we all eat dinner together just like before?" But the weight of before lingered too heavily. Holidays became logistical puzzles, requiring meticulous planning to avoid prolonged overlap. Birthdays were celebrated twice, once upstairs with William, then downstairs with Bella. The arrangement was supposed to ease the children's transition, but each separate celebration only deepened the chasm for William. He would often watch his children blow out candles with Bella downstairs, standing just out of sight on the landing, and wonder what it would take to bridge the divide. For William, work became both a refuge and a lifeline. His promotion to regional director at Maxwell Corp came shortly after the divorce, demanding long hours and frequent travel. The office became a world where he was not the man who was betrayed, but simply William Gonzalez, the professional. Yet even in boardrooms and airports, memories of his family were never far away. A client's casual mention of their children's school play or a glimpse of a father and son at a coffee shop could send him spiraling back into thoughts of what had been lost. He dated sporadically, more out of a sense of obligation to himself than any genuine interest. Friends and colleagues, well-meaning but clueless, would often urge him to get back out there. He met women through mutual connections, dating apps, and even at a few company events. Yet every encounter felt hollow. The shadow of Bella's betrayal always lurking in the background. How could he trust again when the person he had loved most had shattered him so completely? For Bella, the guilt of her actions was inescapable. Though the divorce had been finalized, She carried the weight of her choices in every interaction with William and the children. Her evenings were often spent alone, poring over old photo albums and wondering how she had let fleeting moments of weakness destroy something so profound. She began attending therapy sessions, not to absolve herself, but to learn how to live with the consequences of her actions. She avoided dating altogether, consumed by the belief that she had forfeited her right to happiness. Despite the tension between their parents, the children thrived in their own ways. Marcus excelled academically and joined the debate team, often using the duplex's shared living room as his practice arena. His speeches, full of passion and conviction, often seemed to carry unspoken messages for his parents. James, ever the peacekeeper, found solace in music, teaching himself guitar and composing melodies that filled the house with bittersweet notes. Sarah, the youngest, blossomed in her innocence, her drawings of their family still featuring William and Bella standing side by side. Holidays remained a sore point. Thanksgiving dinners were divided, with the children spending half the day upstairs and the other half downstairs. Christmas morning became an exercise in delicate timing, with gifts opened in 2 sessions to avoid forcing William and Bella to share the same space for too long. Yet there were fleeting moments of connection, like when William and Bella accidentally met at a parent-teacher conference and shared a brief, hesitant smile over Sarah's glowing report card. Time moved forward, but the wounds remained fresh. The duplex arrangement, initially a necessity, began to feel like purgatory for William. He watched Bella through the window as she tended to the small garden outside her door, wondering if she ever felt the same emptiness he did. He found himself rehearsing conversations he would never have, drafting letters in his mind that would never be written. The children, however, became the glue holding the fractured family together. They orchestrated shared movie nights in the duplex's small common area, often convincing their parents to stay longer than they intended. On rare occasions, William and Bella would find themselves laughing at the same joke or exchanging a knowing look during a family game of charades. These moments, though fleeting, hinted at the possibility of healing, if not for their marriage, then for the family they had once been. As the years passed, William began to notice subtle changes in himself. The ache of betrayal dulled, replaced by a quiet acceptance. He stopped avoiding the family photo albums and even found himself smiling at memories of happier times. His children's achievements became his greatest source of pride, each milestone a reminder that, despite everything, he had been a good father. Bella, too, changed. Therapy helped her understand the depth of her mistakes, and she began to find small ways to express her remorse. She left handwritten notes for William on the shared kitchen counter, small gestures of gratitude or updates about the children. Though he rarely acknowledged them, he didn't throw them away. 5 years after the divorce, the weight of time had not erased the pain, but it had softened its edges. The duplex remained a symbol of their fractured family, yet within its walls, a new kind of dynamic was emerging. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. Chapter 9. Forgiveness. The morning was unusually serene. William sat in his living room, sipping his coffee, the scent of fresh brewed beans mingling with the faint chill of the December air. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows on the floor. It was his only day off that week, and he intended to spend it catching up on bills and reading a book Marcus had recommended. Yet, as he turned the page, a soft knock on his door interrupted the quiet. It wasn't unusual for the children to knock. Sarah often forgot her homework downstairs, and James sometimes came to borrow William's guitar tuner. But this knock was hesitant, almost trembling. Setting his mug down, William walked to the door, his mind running through possibilities. When he opened it, he was unprepared for what he saw. Bella stood there, her face pale and drawn. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders hunched as though carrying an invisible weight. Before William could ask what she wanted, she dropped to her knees. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice sharper than intended, a mixture of surprise and discomfort. Bella didn't look up. Instead, she lowered her head, her hands reaching to touch his feet. It was a gesture so uncharacteristic, so steeped in humility, that William froze. "I've spent years," she began, her voice shaking, "years watching you be everything I wasn't, everything I failed to be. A father, a role model, a man with integrity I could never match." William felt a knot tighten in his chest. He hadn't prepared for this, for her to breach the unspoken truce they had maintained for half a decade. He didn't know whether to step back or lift her up. The sight of her kneeling there, tears dripping onto the hardwood floor, left him rooted in place. "Get up," he finally said, though his tone lacked the force he had intended. She shook her head. Not until you hear me, not until you understand how deeply I regret everything I've done." Her words hit like a slow-moving wave, pulling him into memories he had fought to suppress. The betrayal, the lies, the nights spent questioning every moment of their 2 decades together. It all came rushing back, sharper and more vivid than ever. Yet, as he looked down at her, he saw something he hadn't before, a raw vulnerability that couldn't be faked. "I don't want to relive this," he muttered, stepping back slightly, his hand gripping the doorframe. "I know," Bella said, her voice breaking, "but I have to. For me, for us, for whatever is left of us." William's jaw tightened. "There is no us, Bella. There hasn't been for years." She looked up then, her face streaked with tears, her eyes pleading. "I know. I know that I destroyed it. I know I don't deserve anything from you. Not kindness, not understanding, and certainly not forgiveness. But I need to say this. I need to tell you how sorry I am." Her words spilled out like a torrent, as if she had been holding them back for years. She spoke of the guilt that consumed her, the sleepless nights spent replaying her mistakes, and the deep shame she felt every time she saw him. She confessed that every smile he gave the children, every act of love he showed, only deepened her remorse because she knew how much she had hurt him. "I've watched you carry this family even after I betrayed you," she continued, her voice trembling. "You never gave up on the kids. You never gave up on being the father they deserve. I ruined us, but you—" She paused, her voice catching. "You never let that ruin them." William felt his throat tighten. He wanted to stay angry, to cling to the bitterness that had shielded him for so long. But Bella's words pierced through the armor he had spent years building. He hated the part of him that still cared, that still wanted to believe in her sincerity. "I don't understand why now," he said finally, his voice low. "Why say all this now?" Bella wiped at her tears, her hands trembling. "Because I've watched you for 5 years, William. I've watched you sacrifice everything for our children. I've watched you live with a strength I can only envy. And I've watched myself fail, over and over again, to do anything meaningful to fix what I broke." Her voice softened, almost a whisper. "I don't want to die with this on my conscience. I need you to know how much I regret it. Not because I expect anything from you, God knows I don't deserve it, but because you deserve to hear it." William stared at her, his emotions warring within him. He wanted to tell her to leave, to take her apologies and regrets and carry them back downstairs. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw something that stopped him: sincerity, a deep, unyielding sorrow that went beyond guilt. It was the look of someone who had truly reckoned with her mistakes. "Get up," he said again, this time extending his hand. Bella hesitated, her gaze flickering between his face and his outstretched hand. Slowly she reached up, her fingers trembling as they touched his. He pulled her to her feet, his grip firm but cautious, as if holding a fragile glass that might shatter. "Bella," he began, his voice heavy with emotion. "Forgiveness isn't something you can ask for. It's something you have to earn." She nodded, her tears falling freely now. "I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me for me. I'm asking you to forgive me for yourself, so you don't have to carry this weight anymore." Her words struck a chord deep within him. For years, he had carried the burden of betrayal, allowing it to shape his decisions, his relationships, his very sense of self. Could he let it go? Could he truly forgive her, not for her sake, but for his own? He took a deep breath, the silence between them stretching thin. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but resolute. "I forgive you, Bella. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Bella let out a sob, her hands covering her face. William didn't move to comfort her. It wasn't his role anymore. But as she stood there, her tears falling, he felt something shift within him. A release, like a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying, had finally been set down. "Thank you," Bella whispered through her tears. "Thank you." William nodded, stepping back into his apartment. He didn't close the door immediately, leaving it open just enough to let the air between them breathe. Bella turned and walked away, her shoulders still hunched, but her steps lighter than they had been in years. As William shut the door, he leaned against it, exhaling deeply. Forgiveness wasn't a destination, he realized, but a journey, one he had just begun. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. The knock on William's door that Sunday morning marked the start of a slow but significant transformation. Forgiveness, though offered, was not a magical eraser. It was a seed, fragile and demanding, requiring time, care, and effort to grow into something meaningful. Over the months that followed, William and Bella began navigating their new relationship, not as husband and wife, but as two individuals bound by their shared love for their children and the history they could not erase. A fragile truce. The first family dinner after William forgave Bella was awkward, to say the least. Sarah, ever the optimist, had suggested the idea. "It's been so long since we all ate together," she said, her wide, hopeful eyes making it impossible for William to say no. The dining table, once a centerpiece of their family life, now felt like neutral ground in a war-torn land. William sat at one end, Bella at the other, with the children strategically placed in between. Conversation was stilted, punctuated by long silences. Bella made an effort to engage, asking Marcus about his debate team and James about his music, but her voice trembled with nerves. William mostly listened, responding only when spoken to directly, his tone clipped but polite. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As the weeks turned into months, these dinners became more frequent. Gradually, the silences grew shorter, the conversations warmer. By the time Marcus graduated from high school the following spring, the dinners felt less like an obligation and more like a tradition. Shared milestones graduation day was a test of their newfound peace. Marcus, dressed in his cap and gown, was the picture of youthful pride and ambition. William and Bella sat together in the audience, their seats side by side. It was the first time in years they had attended a public event as a united front. When Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, both parents stood to applaud, their cheers blending into one. William felt a surprising warmth as Bella turned to him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "We did this," she whispered, and for the first time in years, he found himself nodding in agreement. The moment wasn't about their past or their pain, it was about their shared joy in seeing their son succeed. It was a reminder that despite everything, they were still a family. Building new traditions over time, they began to create new traditions. Thanksgiving dinners, once split between two households, became a single gathering again. Bella would cook her famous stuffing, while William took charge of carving the turkey. The children, now older and more independent, contributed their own dishes, turning the meal into a collaborative effort. Christmas mornings also changed. Instead of alternating years, they spent the day together as a family. William and Bella would sit on opposite ends of the living room, exchanging small but meaningful gifts: books, a framed photo, or a favorite snack. The gestures were modest but symbolic, a testament to their growing ability to coexist peacefully. Birthdays became occasions for celebration rather than logistical headaches. Sarah's sweet 16 was a particularly emotional milestone. Bella and William worked together to plan a surprise party, their collaboration seamless and almost effortless. Watching Sarah's face light up when she saw her friends and family gathered in the decorated living room was a moment neither parent would forget. The children's growth. As Marcus, James, and Sarah grew into adulthood, they carried the lessons of their family's journey with them. Marcus, now a college student majoring in political science, often spoke of his parents' resilience during his speeches. "My father taught me integrity, and my mother taught me humility," he said at one debate competition. "Together, they showed me that love isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for." James, quiet and introspective, channeled his emotions into music. He wrote a song titled Bridges, which he performed at his high school talent show. The lyrics, a poignant reflection on forgiveness and rebuilding, brought both William and Bella to tears. James later confided that the song was his way of thanking them for staying in each other's lives despite everything. Sarah, ever the peacemaker, grew into a confident young woman with a talent for bringing people together. She often organized family game nights, insisting that everyone participate. Even when the games got competitive, laughter filled the room, a testament to how far they had come. A different kind of love. For William and Bella, their relationship became something neither had expected. The love they once shared as husband and wife was gone, but in its place grew a mutual respect and understanding. They no longer avoided each other during family events. Instead, they worked together seamlessly, their shared history acting as a foundation for their present. William found himself able to speak with Bella without the bitterness that had once tainted every interaction. He no longer saw her as the woman who betrayed him, but as the mother of his children, a person who had made mistakes but was trying to make amends. Bella, for her part, stopped walking on eggshells around him. She began to smile more, her laughter genuine rather than forced. They even began to confide in each other again, though on a different level. Bella shared updates about her therapy sessions, while William spoke of the challenges of his job. Their conversations were no longer about rebuilding their marriage, but about coexisting in a way that honored their family. Reflections on the past years. Later, as Marcus graduated from college and James prepared for his first professional concert, William and Bella found themselves sitting together on the back porch of the duplex, watching the sunset. The silence between them was comfortable, the air filled with the faint hum of cicadas. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" Bella asked softly. William took a moment to respond, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but then I look at the kids, and I realize that what we have now isn't so bad." Bella nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "They turned out pretty amazing, didn't they?" "They did," William said, his voice filled with pride. For the first time in years, they shared a moment of unspoken understanding. The past, with all its pain and mistakes, was still a part of them. But it no longer defined them. They had built something new, not a marriage, but a partnership rooted in their love for their children and the lessons they had learned along the way. New legacy. William's decision to remain in his children's lives despite everything became the cornerstone of their family's new identity. His forgiveness, though hard-earned, taught Marcus, James, and Sarah that love is not about perfection, but about persistence. Bella's humility and efforts to atone for her mistakes showed them the power of accountability and redemption. Their family wasn't perfect, but it was strong. And as the years passed, William and Bella found peace in knowing that, despite the broken bridges of their past, they had built something enduring and meaningful from the ashes. Epilogue. William Gonzalez sat in his favorite chair on the back porch of his modest suburban home, a cup of coffee resting in his hands. The air was crisp, the early morning sun casting a golden hue over the neatly trimmed lawn. In the distance, he could hear laughter, his grandchildren chasing each other around the yard, their energy boundless. It was a scene he never could have imagined all those years ago when his life seemed to fall apart. At 74, William was a man at peace. His hair had turned a dignified silver, and fine lines etched his face, each one a testament to the years of joy, sorrow, and growth he had lived through. Across from him sat Marcus, now a successful lawyer, engrossed in a heated debate with James, who had become a renowned musician. Sarah, ever the glue of the family, was busy helping her own children organize an impromptu talent show for the afternoon. William often marveled at how far they had all come. Watching his children thrive in their respective lives was the most profound validation of the choices he had made. He had sacrificed much, endured heartbreak that once seemed insurmountable, but as he looked around at his family, he knew it had all been worth it. A legacy of love. William's relationship with Bella had settled into something uniquely beautiful. They were no longer partners in the romantic sense, but they were collaborators in life, tied by their shared history and their unwavering commitment to their children and grandchildren. Bella, now living a few miles away, visited often. She had become an integral part of the family's celebrations, her laughter filling the room during birthdays and holidays. The years had softened them both. They no longer needed to tread carefully around each other. Instead, they shared a quiet understanding, a mutual respect born from the trials they had endured together. Their conversations often drifted to memories of the past, not with bitterness, but with a sense of appreciation for the lessons they had learned. Wisdom shared. One summer evening at a family gathering, Marcus's eldest daughter asked William a question that brought the room to a thoughtful silence. "Grandpa," she said, her young voice curious and sincere, "what's the most important thing you've learned in your life?" William paused, setting his drink on the table. He looked around at the faces of his family, their expressions expectant. He took a deep breath, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Love isn't always what we expect it to be," he began. "Sometimes it breaks us, takes us to places we never thought we'd go. But if we're brave enough to let it, love can also heal us in ways we never imagined. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." He looked at Marcus, James, and Sarah, his eyes brimming with pride. "The three of you are my greatest legacy. You've taught me that family isn't about DNA, it's about the choices we make every day, the bonds we build with love and trust. And watching you grow into the people you are today is proof that those choices were the right ones." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling over them. Then, one by one, his children and grandchildren embraced him, their love for him evident in their touch, their smiles, their tears. A life well lived. As the sun set on that warm summer evening, William felt a deep sense of contentment. His life hadn't followed the path he once envisioned, but it had brought him here, to this moment, a moment filled with love, laughter, and the echoes of a family he had helped build. Years later, when asked again about his life, William would repeat the words that had come to define his journey. "Love isn't always what we expect it to be. Sometimes it breaks us, but if we're brave enough to let it, it can also heal us in ways we never imagined. And as his family grew and thrived, his words lived on, a testament to the power of forgiveness, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds of a family forged in the heart. Subscribe now for inspiring stories of love, resilience, and redemption, because every ending is a chance for a new beginning. Don't miss out.